Benjet, who's going to interview Ruth Anders today at her home at 7721 Idlewood Lane. Thank you, Roz, for being here.
There's no, oh, okay. Today is April 3rd, 2008. My name is Rosalind Benjet, and I'm here today to interview Ruth Anders at her home. It's a pleasure because we've worked on so many oral histories together. Ruth, tell me about your family.
Starting with my grandparents.
Okay.
My father's parents came from Russia to escape, of course, persecution, and came to Golden Medina. Their name was I.J. and Rose Rosenberg. My mother's parents came from Lithuania, and they settled in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where my mother was born. And they were Celia and Benjamin Lichtenstein. And my mother, Mary Lichtenstein, had two brothers, Lee and Bob. My grandfather came to Minnesota, and my paternal, and then to Milwaukee, and that's where my father was born. And he went to University of Wisconsin and studied chemistry, and then he went to Harvard Business School and got his degree. So he came back to Milwaukee, and he bought and had a soap company called Lavo. I'm sorry, I wish it were Lavo. I was mistaken. Lavo Company of America. And he was the chemist. It was a very small company. My mother came to Milwaukee to go to college and graduated from Milwaukee Downer College. They met and they married. That's my family. Have I come down to me? I guess I have. I had a brother, deceased brother and sister, Jack and Sylvia, and Polly is living today. And I was born on February 17th, 1929, a while back. And you tell me.
In Milwaukee?
In Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm. What was the neighborhood like where you lived when you were a child?
It was a suburb very much like Highland Park, and it was called Shoreway, Wisconsin. I would say it was don't remember too many Jewish people in the neighborhood. It was small. Milwaukee wasn't big then. And of course we played like probably kids played then. We played out in the street, we played kick the can. We were just, kids, but on my block I don't remember anyone being Jewish. We did belong to Temple Emmanuel, same name, which was the Reformed Temple, Rabbi Hirschberg and Rabbi Joseph Barron. And we went on the holidays. My father had been Orthodox, and so we did, but he took my mother's request and became, Reformed. But we did go every Friday night to my grandparents who lived on the other side of town. It'd be like South Dallas here. It was West Milwaukee. And that was really where the Jewish section was, the Jewish people, but the older people, the Orthodox. And that grandfather, I.J., did found and was president of an Orthodox shul, but we always went to Temple Emmanuel. Mm-hmm. We celebrated the holidays of Hanukkah, Passover at my grandparents, but we really went to the temple only on holidays. I went to Sunday school there. I was confirmed there, and belonged to a Jewish sorority there, SDT. But again, even in my high school years at Shore High School, for some reason wasn't with the Jewish kids. I was friendly with them, but I had a group who weren't, and was president of Y Teens, which is like a YWCA, and it's just the way it was until I got to college.
Well, let's go back to grade school. Where did you go to grade school, and what were your interests while you were a child?
Well, I was always interested in sports. I was such a tomboy. I didn't know there were skirts. I wore knickers until I was like in 8th grade. And I loved to play baseball, and not so much football. We played soccer, and we played, hockey, I guess. But we ice skated, which I was terrible, but we were in Milwaukee. It was the recesses in the winter were all an ice rink outside, so you had to skate. That was what you did. So you had, but I love to. I always love to be with people, and as that Y teen experience. Well, I'm back in elementary school. I'm sorry. I love to learn. I just loved school. I thought everything was just wonderful. You know, I went there from age 2 till I was out of 8th grade because at that time they started that early. It was called normal school. It wasn't until I got married and had children that I caught on that that was funny instead of abnormal school. But it turned out, it happened to be the adjunct of it was a teacher's college. And I understand now that all the teachers' colleges, the school on which they practiced, we were the guinea pigs, was called normal school. But I mean, I've been teased about that to this day.
And then what about high school?
Well, I touched on that. I always liked the literature and social studies, and I was very active in doing, as I said, the Y teens and the friends, and it was just, high school was great. That was just a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Let's go back to your family's Jewish participation in the community. You said you didn't go to synagogue other than the holidays, but did anyone belong to any Jewish organizations or have
mother did.
interaction with the community in any way?
Yes, my father was very busy with his business. And but my mother belonged to many Hadassah. I think there was Pioneer Woman. It was just a given that she was out there doing social work, you know. And she even worked at the settlement house at which Goldmeyer had worked at that point. So it was, I always saw that my mother was doing something for other people, and probably that started my feeling of, you know, that's what it's all about. You do things for other people because just they need your help and you don't need help, you know.
How about with the Gentile community? Did you have any interactions?
I believe that I did as a youth, but I think that my parents, when I think of their friends, they were in a Jewish circle. I think it was probably like in Dallas. But they had no objections to whom I brought home. I mean, it was not that narrow.
Did you attend Sunday school or Hebrew school?
Not Hebrew school, never learned Hebrew, sorry to say. We went to Sunday school, and we, you know, hated it like most kids, and then we got confirmed, but it was standard. You know, you just did that, certainly even, let's say, in the Reform.
What about after high school?
I went to Northwestern my first year, and I joined the Jewish sorority, AE Phi, and that was my beginning of having really close Jewish friends and being in that milieu. And then my father got sick, and turned out he became a paraplegic, so for the weather being so harsh in Milwaukee, they moved to Phoenix, Arizona. So I transferred my sophomore year, and of course I thought I had really died and gone to heaven. If you've lived in cold climate and had to put on snowshoes and galoshes and heavy coats and, you know, and just didn't know there was another existence, it was okay. I got there, put on the shorts, put on the jeans, played golf, played tennis, went swimming, went up to the mountains to have these barbecues. I mean, I think it was kind of a play school, but I got a good education, University of Arizona in Tucson. They went to Phoenix. I studied to become a teacher because, again, I like to work with people, and graduated there. And I was active there. Again, I was the A5 president, so that qualified me. I think was in line to be the Pan-Hellenic president. So it was sort of an interfaith, you know, and that was fun. And I was interested in Hillel, so I started that Hillel. And so I didn't know I was tending to go. I just naturally was doing more with Jewish people. I was very comfortable, you know. It was the time. And what else did I do there? Oh, you know, the usual who's who in America and all that, you know, whatever. It was fun.
And then what after graduation? You were a teacher? What kind of teacher?
I was an elementary school teacher, and my first year I went to Long Beach, California, because some of my sorority sisters lived in LA, and that I already knew the Southwest was heaven, so I was going to stay there. I was never, ever going to go back to the Midwest or the East. And after that, I took a trip to Europe with a friend from college, And she went back, and I thought, I haven't signed up for the next school year. I think I'll just play a little bit. So I played a while in Paris and all, and then I thought maybe I better get a job. So I went to I met a rabbi from Paris, and he said, well, you can go and take your GAT or something. It's a government test, and you become a G7 or something. Mm-hmm. So I took it, and I went to find out where I could teach. And they said, well, there was a place, it was about a month late, a place needed in Rabat, French Morocco. Of course, had to find a map, had no clue where that was. And I said, okay. So I went there, and meanwhile my parents thought I was never going to come home. And I taught in a Quonset hut. It was SHAPE, it was Headquarters 5th Air Division. And it was a very great base. And I taught with one other woman, lived in a French hotel. And
these were the children of
the children of the Air Force, and actually they weren't brats; they were just cute kids, I mean, they say Air Force brats, and I'm sure today those children probably can't read because I had never taught first grade, and we were sharing books. Can you imagine teaching 6-year-olds to read when 1 hour you can use your books and the next hour they have to have them? It was pretty basic, but it was fun. And then I came back to New York, and I still couldn't quite get west, so I walked into the United Nations, and I thought, after taking a tour, I thought, that gal's, I could do that. So I went and found out how you got employed and asked for a job, and they said, okay, well, tell me your background, and can you speak another language? And I said, oh yes, I can speak German. And they said, well, good, you could take a tour, and oh, I guess so. Well, of course, I knew I couldn't. I had taken 6 years of German, but I don't think I could have taken a tour in it, but sometimes you have to kind of pretend. So anyway, got that job, and I stayed there till summer. Then I went back, and I decided I would get a job in California. And then I started Santa Monica. I had a 4th grade job. And would you like to hear how I got to Dallas?
Yes.
Okay, it's my favorite story. I
think it involves a little gentleman.
Yes, it did involve a gentleman, my lover. So I met Sorrel Newman, who was Sorrel Ungerman, from daughter of Edith and Uncle Meyer Ungerman, because they were big in the community here. And she brought me here to have some dates with some fellows, and okay. And the 4th date I had was with Dave Andrews. And we went out Christmas night, and one more day, possibly 2 times, because he was running a grocery store, and it's the busiest time at Christmas. And we went out New Year's Eve to the Columbian Club, and he proposed to me that night. Now, all he said to me was, well, I guess if I don't see you, when are you leaving? I'm leaving Monday. Well, I guess if I don't marry you, I'll never see you again. He said he didn't say it, but I didn't make it up. So I said, so is that a proposal? And he said, I guess so. And I said, okay. And we got engaged that night. Met his parents the next day. Loved them. Wonderful. Hierarchal and Harry Andrews. Unbelievable people. Sweet, loving, from Europe. And went to see my parents in a couple days, and then went back to finish that semester so we could be married February 12th, 1956. And then I stayed here because he was a native Dallasite, and that's how I got to Dallas.
Mm-hmm. And where were you married?
We were married in Phoenix at some hotel that's no longer there. And my parents were there, and my sister's brother, and it's a very small wedding, probably 50 people, different from today, and very comfortable, maybe 100, I doubt it.
And what was Dallas like when you first got here?
I was thinking about the other day, I remember they had a watermelon stand on Hillcrest past SMU, and it was just what you expected. I mean, Dave would say, oh, we always go and get watermelon there. They cut you a slice, and you just sit on these cruddy, little benches, and that was just fun. And it was kind of like that. It was more small town. I mean, it's only 52 years ago, but it was different. There were, I'm trying to think, was it trying to think of the bird. What's the bird with the wonderful feathers? Peacock.
Peacock.
I believe there was a whole thing of peacocks, a whole area where North Park is today. And you know, you'd see horses sometimes in areas, in you know, pastures. It was, I mean, to give you an example, when my mother-in-law came here in 1921, going way back, the streets weren't paved up to where she lived later till Deloach. And so, I mean, these streets were paved, of course, but it was just small, and it was good because getting into the Jewish community was very comfortable, very welcoming, and it was just simpler. I mean, but life was simpler. But Dallas was definitely, has come, you know, we didn't have the big art museums, we didn't have what we have today. I remember Theater 3, when we joined it, it was on downtown and Main Street in practically a basement with card table chairs. So, I mean, the culture has improved its places of acting.
Dave was born in Dallas?
Yes.
How did his family get here?
His father was pretty much like a socialist, and he left Russia because it was very oppressive. Yet when he was in Dallas, he always thought everything in Russia was still wonderful. I didn't quite get that as much as he loved the United States. But he came after one of his brothers came, and then they came from, as I said, Russia, and he had an older brother, Mayor, and then Isaac, and then Harry, that was Dave's father, and then Abe, and they brought them all, and then they brought the parents. And so they had their whole family, and they started the grocery store, Andrew's Grocery on Pearl Street, 1921, 23. And then, at first he peddled like other immigrants did. Then my mother-in-law, I will summarize it, but she came from Suwałki, Poland, from a very Orthodox family. Her father was like a teacher. And she was supposed to have an arranged marriage, and she already had fallen in love with someone who was Jewish, but I don't know if he was Jewish. Anyway, and she didn't want this arranged marriage. So she wrote to her uncle here, Isidore Weil. It was Izzy and Fanny Weil, W-Y-L-L, and her aunt, Tebby Tobolowsky, the whole beginning of all the Tobolowskys in Dallas. And they sent her a letter that she said the old man, Victor, I think, Hexter, wrote. He was an attorney, the permission. So she did that. She got, and her parents were very sad, but they understood. She got a passport. So she came by herself. She was born in 1899. She came at 22, 1921, and took the ship, I think it was to London, and then it was London to the United States, whatever, and then got on a train by herself and came to Dallas. And she loved, from the minute she got here, she loved it. And she was a businesswoman, a writer, talented, loving, did all sorts of you know, like we did, settled the Russians and did lots of things. Very close family.
What were you doing as a bride?
As a bride, before I started having, and as long as I had my children, I had one. Jill was, let's see, we were born in 56, Jill was born in 57, Roger in 59, Mark in 60, and Rachel in 62. Okay, but I was just here at 56.
Right.
Frances Blatt and Myrna Reese welcomed me, did things with me socially, and then I started with, I think the first thing, I got right in the Jewish community, that was just a given, was National Council of Jewish Women, and I was a study club chairman for a while, and that was interesting for me. And then, let's see, Jewish community, family service, when the Russians were coming over, Dave and I resettled the Russians, you know, when you get them, at this point, at the airport, my mother-in-law met them at the train station, and they were Polish, that she resettled, I think looking always for some history of her 22.
That would have been right after the war.
Right, family members who died, but then later the Russians came for a different reason, of course. And we settled Russians. I started teaching ESL to the Russians because there were so many, you know, it was a sort of a pilot program. Susea did it with me and Myrna Reese. And then let's see, I really went on to, after doing the volunteer at ESL, I joined the staff at Brookhaven College with Sue Licton was the head of the ESL department, the non-credit, and I started teaching there, and I taught there for 20 years. And meanwhile, I was still doing volunteer work. I'm trying to think what I think I can't remember. You can ask me something else.
Okay. What was the Dallas of your children's age like when they were growing up?
It was simplified. I mean, you know, the kids walked to school, public school. It was Kramer. They went to Hillcrest. The boys in 8th and 9th went to St. Mark's, but Hillcrest, Rachel went to and Jill. It was excellent. They weren't integrated, which was wrong, but they weren't. I think they began to be integrated in about, actually when my boys went to St. Mark's, not for that reason. And then Rachel finished there. You know, it was like the children all had one activity. You know, they didn't do every sport and they didn't do every lessons, every type of lesson. So, I mean, I think we were at a much slower pace, you know, as versus our grandchildren, as you well know today. And that's just the way it is. And of course, there were no computers, and we didn't have color television, and we had black and white, and emphasis was not on that. So, you know, it was different. It was different.
Mm-hmm. When you first got married, where did you live?
We lived at Town and Country, and that was over on Preston, Douglas, and past Northwest Highway. And it turned out a lot of people, Jewish people, lived there. And also, I remember Rossborough Jr., which we never thought. I mean, Rossborough Senior. No, wrong. He was Junior. Oh, because he lived there, and it was nice. It was a park. It was furnished, so you didn't have to think.
Mm-hmm.
You just moved in. Then we moved to Richardson, and actually out there, now that I think of it, I organized a federation, a women's federation group in Richardson, so we could raise money there for women. And then after that, I was pregnant again with a third child, and there was one bedroom. I thought that was time to leave. 1,200 square feet was getting a little crowded. So we moved to this place, 7721, and I've been here ever since, and I plan to be here, I hope, a long time. It's home. It's
Mm-hmm.
home. It's home.
Now, did the children go to Sunday school at Temple Emmanuel?
They did, and somewhere in there, we went to, they had something, I think the educational school, there were a lot of changes, so we got in our heads to go to Temple Shalom, and that was good, and then we came back. We really belonged, we felt, at Temple. We supported both continually. So they all went to Sunday school, they all ran across the street to the, I forget what 7-Eleven when they weren't supposed to, so they could, you know, get their ices, like I think kids still did until they took it away. And then they all got confirmed. That would be it.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them went to Jewish camps, and I think Mark did, Echo Hill, and Rachel, Young Judea, and I think that had an impression on them.
You've been involved in lots of different organizations in Dallas.
Well, see, I mentioned family service.
Mm-hmm.
Well, are we close to, I guess,
Well, how about Temple?
Temple, not really. Oh, yes. Jerry Beer and Hortense Sanger founded the Rose Terrace Preschool, which is in South Dallas. And then I co-chaired it the next year. I think it was with Jerry. And we were responsible, besides programming, etc., for getting food to them for lunches. And I can remember lovely volunteers coming. It's really far in South Dallas, and we'd really never been there. It was like the other side of the world. And some of these women just really couldn't get used to it, but they did. They made food at Temple, and then they wrapped it all up with foil, and they drove over with it. It was awesome. And to this day, Temple Manual has that as a, I mean, we've let it go, but we still send money to that as a project, Roach Terrace Preschool. It's in the housing development there. So let's see, Temple. That's about right.
You didn't sing in the choir?
Oh, yes, I did.
Yes,
Thank
you
you.
did.
I need all the help I can get, Roz. Yes, I sang in the choir for about 8 years. In fact, that is important because I think singing in the choir really touched a Jewish nerve because the music was so magnificent. And Simon Sargon would always explain what it was and the history and if it was Bloch, who he was. And it was very exciting. The only problem was I didn't have a good voice and I really didn't like hearing my
But you got to go on the big tour.
But I loved it. I loved it. They were great people in the choir.
And you did the tour with the choir.
Oh, I did tour with them. Yes, we had some wonderful tours, singing in Prague and singing in we sing in Amsterdam and singing in New Mexico, and we had a lot of good tours. It was a great experience. I cherish that.
And you served as president of the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. How did you become interested in the Historical Society at that time?
Really, it was in the back of my mind because my mother-in-law, with me and really mostly with my son Roger, continued to write poetry and continued to take it over to the Historical Society, which I knew nothing about. And I remember sitting there with her and kind of looking around and listening. It was Rose Biederman, then was the archivist. And it just sort of started to get into me that, that's what it's all about. If we maintain our history, maybe we'll for sure know who we are. And it just kind of sat there because it took years until I ever got interested. And then I think it was actually Reed Heller that called me once and said, would you like to be president of the Dallas Jewish Historical Society or something like that? And I said, well, not really. Well, we just don't have anybody. And I said, well, let me think about it. And I thought, well, it'll be a challenge. So I did, and I loved it. And I think I followed Rachel Bortnick. And Rachel Bortnick had taken 5 of us from Dallas to Turkey on a Jewish tour because she'd been married there. And so that also piqued my interest, and she got me interested. And so it was a natural, and it was a real big challenge. And I think what really interested me was that it was a chance to really lift it up. It was doing very well, but it was just kind of a plateau. And at that time, most of those people were my age now, or not quite. And so I looked at it to think that maybe I could get people that were younger. And we did get a lot of new, fresh blood or interest. And it was exciting.
Because you got the grant that started the thing.
That's right, we did.
Tell us about that.
Well, Sue was on the board then, Sue Saya. And we'll go back. Ginger Jacobs and I went to talk to Gary, just on his trip to South America.
Gary Weinstein. Weinstein.
Yeah, Gary Weinstein. And we went to talk to him about how important we thought it was to be a part of the foundation. Not foundation, what do we call it?
Federation.
Federation, but it was an all-city group. And we told him what it was all about and what we stood for in our history and how we wanted to maintain history. And Ginger also said, I need to do an oral history of your father, because he was getting really old. And I do think with what we sold him with and what we brought in writing, that Ginger and I spent days writing and typing on the old typey computer, and the idea that his father's history was important, as well as he had done this when he was in New Jersey, Gary had. So he was very aware of the importance of historical societies, kind of put together and got us a leg up, and we were on that committee, and they took us, I think, weren't there 11 agencies that got funded?
Yes.
Yes, and we got funded, and of course we had to raise some money, I mean, as well as the city, I mean, the rest of the Jewish organizations, but it was a wonderful experience because I cannot tell you, I never realized that Jewish organizations could get together. You went from the funding for a Jewish school to funding for Hillel and so on, and it was wonderful. And the leadership was fabulous. I just loved it. And we got it, and today we have, as you well know, this incredible space with a climate-controlled, unbelievable vault where the sliding of the shelves is automatic. You press a button and they slide over. I mean, it is top of the mark. And so that was exciting.
And it was under your leadership that we started at the Historical Society the Ann Loeb Sikora Award.
Right, and before that, actually, I give credit to that because I think it was Kleiman that thought of naming it that. I'm not sure. But before that, Ilya Dax and I, what did we say, it was 1996? You have
96 was...
And I'm going to give this to you. And she and I thought of it, and then I needed some help, and we've been working together, and she's a joy. And so we put together a fundraiser to honor Jerry Beer, and it was Bob Beer's wife, because she had done Family Place and very many things along with Rose Terrace. And I'm laughing because Ilya and I went onto the computer, I mean, what did we know 12 years ago? And we typed it out and we put it in color. It was this really cheesy color because that was the way it was then. And we put it just on a piece of paper and we folded it up and we addressed it. It was so simple. I mean, it was so simple compared to how classy we've gotten today. And we did it, and we were very successful. It was exciting. And then we did one more like that, getting a little improved in our methods now, for Jimmy Alexander, who was one of the earliest presidents. And that was held at the Hall of State, Dallas State Fair, and that was exciting because people had not been down there, had I either. And then we got classy, and then we met, I really think it was Carol Aaron or Harold Kleiman who suggested that Ann Loeb was such a factor in our Jewish community with what she had done, and she had died early of cancer, and that would be a nice name to give to our fundraiser, and then along with that, honor people that were followed in her footsteps, so to say. And that was exciting. And that first one we have, I have to look at it. We were just talking about the first one we had, I think, was. Do you remember what it was, Roz?
2002.
Oh wait, 2006. No, that's the most recent. Do you remember?
2002.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you write? Oh, here you did. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we're 1998. Oh, we made it every 2 years, so it should have been 2000. We missed a year. Well, Simon Sargon, Andrew Weinstein, and Harold Kleiman, and they got the first Ann Sikora Award. And that was at the Clumbing Club, and we had a sculptor who made this beautiful statue that we gave to each one. It's sort of like hands. It was like the hands of peace.
Lador Vador, I think.
Yeah, Lador Vador. It was beautiful. Yes, it was a child's hand with a grown-up's hand. Beautiful, in bronze. And then the next 2 years we did Arnie and Janice Sweet and Rabbi Gerald Klein, and we gave a special award to Ginger Jacobs because she founded it with the society with Ruth Can back, how many years have we been?
Since the early 70s, 71, I think.
71, I think, years ago, imagine. And then the next time we had, 2006, we had Harold Pullman, Rabbi Nancy Kasten, and Howard and Leslie Schultz. And I will tell you how exciting it's going to be in 2 years, this is 2008, in 1 year, next spring, thanks to Cheryl Logan, who dropped from heaven. She came in and mentioned to you, Roz, and me, and Debbie Tobias, and Mandy Dossie, our incredible archivist, and she said she thought it would be really nice to take out our, 300-some histories that we have, either from little
audio tapes.
Audio tapes. Then we got to the big VHS that we got, fancy with cameras, and then of course DVDs. And she said she thought it was really nice to take them and do a summary of them, listen to them, and find out what's it's about, and then what they're all about, and then put that into a book. And then she said, and then you could have an event in the spring of '09, and people who are associated with the families would, of course, love that. They will come. And you could have a film made, which turns out it's going to be by Cynthia and Alan Mondale. And you could honor all these different people as part of the Ann Sikora Award. unbelievable. And we said, well, we don't have a big volunteer corps. Oh, she said, I've got lots of names. And she started to write them down. And Roz, you and I were like looking at her like, where has she been all our lives? She sat there and off the top of her head, she gave us, what, 50, 60 names. And do you know that we have 78 volunteers, thanks to her and some of our doing, who are transcribing these oral histories. It's unbelievable. So we're real excited about that, and that is probably going to be the best ever. Now we have our incredible space, so it's been just fun, challenging, and very rewarding. I feel privileged to be a part of all this.
But you're also a mentor to young artists.
Oh,
How
yes.
did you become interested in doing this?
Well, if
what
you
kind
look
of role do you play? I look around, I see beautiful pieces of art everywhere.
I love art. Dave and I loved, actually, and I will show you later with the camera, Jewish art. But I don't know, I just always kind of like the underdog. He's not an underdog, but someone that needs help. It draws me in. It feeds my need, I guess, to be helpful. And Joe Lopez, I met him through the Magnet Arts, and he's a lovely young man, unbelievable story, walked at age 10 and a half from Honduras, walked, got underneath trains, hung out, did little jobs, shoe shine, whatever he did, had no money, had no family. And he had this inspiration that he just wanted to do art. He wanted to make something of himself. He lived in a village where he did not know how to read or write. So after getting as far as the border and being sent back a couple times, he got to Dallas. And he was in a school, I forget the TJ or whatever. And then the woman noticed that when he was going to high school, he had a talent. So she got him ready to go to the Magnet Arts. And he went to the cluster of metal sculpture. And he just ran with it, and he won awards, and that's where I met him, and I fell in love with him. He's 22, just right for me. And I sponsored him and got him into art shows, and he's just a wonderful young man, and we're still working on getting him more shows. So it's been fun because I've found more artists in that group, and it's exciting.
It is.
Speaking of what we did with other people, I'll go back a bit. When my children were growing up, we always, not only did we settle the Russian families, but there was called Servas, an organization where people from other countries come and you house them for a week or so, and you get to learn about their culture and they learn about yours. So we did this for years. So again, my children, our children, noticed that you could always help other people. It didn't matter about the color of their skin or their nationality. If someone needed help or wanted to get to know you, you did that, you know. And it was so interesting because my loving husband, Dave, was very, very bitter against the Germans because, of course, he was in the Navy. He was at D-Day. But and for that reason, because my mother-in-law lost her 22 immediate family, which, you know, he never had aunts or uncles or cousins on his mother's side, he was pretty anti-German. So we get a request for 2 German boys to come to us. And he thought about it a minute, and then he said, okay, which was amazing. Never bought anything German. There's nothing German in my house. The whole thing. I mean, he was way patriotic. And they came, and it was so interesting. I couldn't believe that he was so patient. Their uncle had been a Nazi, one of them, and he told them about the war. And the young man was really interested and really cared. He went back to Germany. He sent us gifts. I'm sure that maybe his own guilt or his own understanding. And it was such a wonderful experience to think that he turned somebody around who had a Nazi uncle. It's very exciting.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about your family today.
Pardon me?
The family today.
Oh, today. Well, as a grandmother, I'll start with the grandchildren.
Okay.
And the oldest. Jill has Benjamin, who's 22, and Max, who's 17. They're wonderful. She was married to Max Lipschitz. Then we have Roger, who's married to Edith Baker's daughter, Riddy Baker. And they had wonderful Kaylee. Have to be careful not to say each one's wonderful. And this is going on tape. And they're all wonderful. And then we have Mark, who has Louis, who's just 14.
All right, how old is Kaylee?
Oh, Kaylee is 10, yes, thank you. And Louis is 14, he's had his bar mitzvah. Miles is 12, ready coming up next year. And Elise was just 9. Then we have Rachel, who's married to Ben Tish, and she has Ezra, who's 10, and Rebecca, who's 6. And they are all absolutely, they're wonderful. I'm the grandmother.
Of course.
I'm totally unprejudiced.
Oh, no.
I mean, very objective.
I have to say I am in love with Max because I did meet him recently.
Yes, he did one of the interviews, didn't he?
Yeah.
He's fun. They're all fun.
And I've read recently about Rachel and the wonderful work that she's doing, and you must be so proud.
It's pretty exciting.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, Rachel had the opportunity to start a program in Chad. It's refugee camps. The people who live there have been sent, shooed out by arms, by military, to Chad from Darfur. And they had been cooking with wood, which they had to gather in the area away from their camp and their tents. And when they were going out there, they were being raped and maimed and killed by the militia. It was a war. So Rachel found in Netherlands, Amsterdam, there was a company that produced solar cookers. And they basically are a piece of cardboard, a piece of foil, and then they have to be cut a certain way so that they are folded up and look sort of like a small flower, but it's closed. And it's flat on the bottom, and it's solar. They put them out in the sun, which is, out probably 14 hours. And so they could stay in their tents. They also helped that there's no more deforestation because the trees were, if you saw a picture, she was there in October, it's totally barren. It's sand. One tree, and then one more. So that, of course, was very important. And she started talking about it, sending out pamphlets, doing fundraising, and it kind of snowballed. And she went to Chad with 2 other people, Rabbi Schulweis and Janice Resnick. A woman, Janice, started this in Los Angeles as a project called Jewish World Watch. And the idea is, do not stand idly by. People stood idly by when the Nazis killed our 6 million Jews, and Rabbi Schulweis saw the importance of doing something for those who couldn't help themselves now because of genocide in Sudan. So she and 2 women, went to Chad in October and were so delighted to see the entire camp with all these solar cookers sitting out bright and shiny, and they sent 2 pots with them too. And Rachel joked, she said, I think they must have gotten the word on television that we're coming to visit, and they all put out their solar cookers. Well, of course, their cookers were out all the time. They have no television, they have no radio, they have no bathrooms, they have nothing. But they also started the cottage industry there, and the women helped them, our women, to understand different things they could do, and so they make them. And 14 years and above, they make these solar cookers now. They're sending them flat. They're sending them to be assembled, and so they've done that. And Rachel got the Edward Bronfman International Humanitarian Prize. It's been in existence for 4 years. This is the 4th year, and this year she is the first woman to receive it, and it's a very prestigious award. And the thing I love the best is that Rachel says the reason that she's always been doing this type of work, she was head of the cults and missionaries in LA and so on, is that her grandmother, my mother-in-law, wrote a poem to her when she was 8. It's in one of her books, For Whom Do I Sing My Songs? And the poem says that I would like you to listen to me and understand that we have what we need, but there are people out there, little children with their hands outstretched, skinny, without food, and it's our responsibility, and it's my conscience hurts, and listen to me so you'll understand what I mean about it. And Rachel said, I'm bearing witness for my mother-in-laws and all the Jews because no one did, so now I'm standing up for the Africans to bear witness for them. So I love the Lador Bador. I think it's very beautiful.
And your whole family's going to have a reunion in New York together, right?
And there also is a little stipend that goes with it of $100,000, which of course Rachel's putting back into the project. No, I imagined that would happen. And it's very exciting. They'll have it at the Pierpont Morgan Library, May 6, 2008, which is, looking at it on the internet, is awesome building. I mean, just incredible. Have you been there?
No.
It's supposed to be just, I mean, I looked at it. And so all my children, and they're very supportive of each other, and you know, we do what we can do. And I'm very happy, except for, of course, my love gone, but I have friends and family and activities, and it's good. All is good.
And who are your role models?
I think I picked up a little bit of everything as I grew up, and I think from teachers and parents, but I think really my mother-in-law, Russell, because she just had a way, a deep soul that cared so much for other people, and she had this thirst for knowledge, and she had this great sense of humor, and then she was always volunteering, and it kind of just put it all together, you know, and I just think that she probably was my big role model, and I loved her dearly.
And you are most proud of?
I would say I'm probably most proud of my family, you know. What's better than your family? I mean, family is, family first, is one of my children says. And, you know, they're good, they're great people, and I think that they give in their own way, different ways to society, and they understand the Jewish, you know, tikkun along, and I think they do it in the Jewish community and out of the Jewish community. And their children see this, and I'm hoping that's the way they will live their lives, and I believe they will.
Is there anything that you'd like to add?
Not until you turn it off.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Ross.
This one here? Same one that goes on. It's on pause now.
This is my mother's parents, Celia and Benjamin Lichtenstein, and they're living in right here in Atlantic City, where they had a little jewelry store. They kind of were semi-retired because they had one in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Excuse me. This is my mother's family. My mother's the only girl up on the left, and her brother Leo Lichtenstein on the right. We called Bampy and Nana were the parents, and her younger brother. That's great. Now that's my mother-in-law's. Let's keep. This is the jewelry store. It would be probably about 1900 or maybe 1899. I don't know.
And where was it?
Oh, this was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Okay. This is a picture of my mother's wedding. You can see her in the middle with my dad on the left and her brother and some cousins. This is Rocco, Bubby's family, her father and her brother and her sister, and there was another sister. And they were all lost in the Holocaust. Hi, Rocco, my mother-in-law's parents, her mother, Naomi Clayman, and her father. This was his second marriage. She was 16 when he married her, and he was all over 30. But he had an unfortunate happening with his first wife, who died suddenly. I will tell you that story later. My mother-in-law's family, I told you, were murdered in the Holocaust, and she continued to send, I believe it's $25 American Express checks over to Europe, Poland, Suwałki, Poland, hoping that that might help them to get out. Of course, it was not a chance, but it was her hope. Okay, you can hold that one for a Harry's parents, who were brought here, who were living above the down below where Dave's family lived above the store originally. Okay, so we did. This is a picture of Harry Andrus's family. His older brother with the top hat, his next brother to the left, Isaac, and Harry's the little one on the left above his picture of his aunt, and the mother is holding Abe down below. And Harry at that age, Dave at that age looked exactly like Harry. A very strong Andrus gene there. Yeah, see, that's good. It's 50 minutes. This is a picture of my mother, probably when she was maybe 60 or something, I don't remember. And a picture of my father. Same portrait time. This is a picture of Dave's and my wedding in 1956, and my maternal grandmother, Lichtenstein's on the right. She was about 85 or something. And then on the left is I.J. Rosenberg with his second wife, Goldie. Might have been his third wife, he had 3 of them. This is You Know Who, a few years back, like 52. The beautiful bride. With the handsome husband.
Yeah, he certainly
he was cute. That's why I fell straight in love with him. That smile, that never-ending sweet smile. Okay, so we got him. Oh. And another picture of my Nana, Suda Lichtenstein. And her husband, Benjamin, Ben, after whom Jill's oldest is named. Okay. And Dave's and my certificate of marriage. Something's not right here. Okay, it's the brass that's reflecting. It's the, yeah, sorry. Mm-hmm. Thanks. This is the wedding invitation framed of my mother-in-law, Mr. and Mrs. Sam Tobolowsky and Mr. and Mrs. Izzy Weil. Request the pleasure of your presence at the marriage of their niece, Ida Ray Clayman, by Mr. Harry II, I guess, Mr. Harry Andrus. And then it goes on, and they say at home, 2400 Caroline Street, Dallas, Texas. And then at the bottom, which we don't do this way anymore, it says, we wish to express our thanks and appreciation for your beautiful gift and assure you that both the gift and the spirit in which it was given will always be pleasantly remembered by us. Sincerely, Mr. and Mrs. H. Andrus.
Don't give the date away.
Is that beautiful? Where is the date up here? Here we go. It was Sunday evening, the 8th of January, 1922 at 7 o'clock at Corinth Street, Dallas, Texas. Very nice and formal. This is my beautiful, handsome father. I was very close to my father. And he is in World War I. And he was doing something with chemical warfare. It was his field. What I didn't say, which is really interesting, is too late. This menorah was bought in the Jewish Museum in Chicago about 35 years ago. I now see that it's in a catalog for Jewish items, so I guess the artist is still making different versions. To me, it's like Fiddler on the Roof with the little house there flying in the air. Kiddush cups, and the tiny one with in the front was Dave Andrus's, so they had that representation then. spice boxes from the New York Museum. That's enough. Oh, I love this. Oops. No. All right. It's a spice handle from Israel. Very nice. Along with my nails. Okay, that's enough. Oh, this is. Sadaka boxes, and this little statue on the right was brought by Roger from his teen tour, and it's by Frank Meister. Praying. Okay, that's enough already, Ruth. It's off, it's off. Another plate. Okay. We're good. It's just good. I just don't know how to